Winter arrived the way it always did in the northern town of Graymore, slowly, quietly, and without mercy. Snow fell not in storms, but in endless, silent sheets, as if the sky itself was shedding skin. Streets disappeared beneath white layers. Houses became shapes without detail, and the forest at the edge of town turned into a black scar against the frozen land. People said winter nights in Graymore were different. Not colder, not darker, just watchful. Ethan Holloway returned to Graymore on the first night of December, his car tires crunching through ice-covered roads. He hadn't planned to come back. He had sworn he never would. But when his mother died alone in the old family house, there was no one else left to deal with what remained. The Holloway house stood where the forest began, a tall, narrow structure half swallowed by trees. Snow clung to its roof like a burial shroud. The windows were dark, but Ethan felt it immediately, the unmistakable sensation of being seen. He shut the car door, and the sound echoed too loudly in the stillness. No wind, no animals, no distant town noise, just silence thick enough to press against his ears. As Ethan walked up the path, he noticed the footprints. They weren't his. They were fresh, leading from the forest to the front door and stopping there. His breath fogged as he stared. Maybe the realtor, maybe the police. He told himself that, even though the footprints were barefoot, the door unlocked easily. Inside, the house smelled of cold wood and old dust. His breath echoed unnaturally, as if the rooms were larger than they should have been. He shut the door behind him, and for a moment, he thought he heard something exhale from deep within the house. "Hello," he called. Nothing answered. The power was out, as expected. He used his phone's flashlight to move through the hallway. The walls were exactly as he remembered, pale wallpaper with tiny cracks like veins. The floorboards creaked under his weight, each sound lingering too long. He reached the living room. That's when he saw the chair. It was placed directly in front of the fireplace, facing the room instead of the fire. His mother's old rocking chair, but it hadn't been there before. He was certain of it. The chair rocked slightly, back and forth, back and forth. Ethan froze. The motion stopped. Slowly, he stepped closer. The fireplace was cold and used. Ash sat undisturbed. The chair was empty. He told himself the movement was from the settling house. Old houses did that in winter. Still, he didn't sit. That night, Ethan slept upstairs in his childhood bedroom. Snow tapped softly against the window like fingernails. The cold seeped through the walls, no matter how many blankets he piled on. At some point, he woke up. The house was breathing. Not metaphorically, not figuratively. He could hear it. A slow, deep inhale, followed by a longer exhale that traveled through the walls. The sound came from everywhere at once, vibrating through the floorboards, the ceiling, his bones. Ethan sat up, heart pounding. The breathing stopped. Then came footsteps. Slow, bare, moving downstairs. He grabbed his flashlight and opened the bedroom door. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, shadows pooling at the far end. At the bottom of the stairs, a pale shape stood in the darkness. "Mom," he whispered. The shape tilted its head. The light flickered, and the shape vanished. Ethan didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, the town looked abandoned. Snow-buried cars, shops, sidewalks. Only a few people moved through the streets, faces down, avoiding eye contact. At the general store, an old man stared at Ethan as he paid for supplies. "You shouldn't stay there," the man said quietly. Ethan stiffened. "Stay where?" "The Holloway house." Ethan swallowed. "Why?" The man leaned closer. "Because winter remembers." Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the man turned away. That afternoon, Ethan found his mother's journals in a box in the basement. The basement was colder than the rest of the house, the air sharp and damp. His flashlight beam shook as he flipped through the pages. The entries started normal. Weather notes, grocery lists, lonely thoughts. Then they changed. December 14th. It started breathing again. December 16th. The house knows my name. December 20th. It stands by my bed at night and waits for me to notice. Ethan's chest tightened. The final entry was written shakily. "Winter nights don't end here. They just sink deeper." That night, The temperature dropped sharply. Ice formed on the inside of the windows. Ethan sat in the living room, fireplace roaring, trying to convince himself nothing was wrong. That's when the knocking started. 3 slow knocks. From inside the walls. Not the door. Not the windows. The walls. Knock. 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 Ethan stood, heart racing. "Stop," he whispered. The knocking moved, traveling through the house, following him as he backed away. It reached the living room wall behind the rocking chair. The chair began to rock again. This time, something sat in it. It looked like his mother. Her skin was pale blue, lips cracked, eyes sunken and black. Snow clung to her hair. Her chest rose and fell unnaturally, each breath accompanied by the sound of shifting wood. "Ethan," she said. He shook his head. "You're not real." She smiled. The walls inhaled. The fire went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Cold hands wrapped around Ethan's wrists, dragging him backward. The floor stretched, the walls bending inward like ribs. He screamed, but the sound was absorbed, swallowed by the breathing house. He found himself standing outside, in the snow. The house loomed before him, taller than before, its windows glowing faintly like eyes. Footprints formed behind him, bare footprints, leading back to the forest. The house exhaled one last time. Ethan followed the tracks into the trees, his breath leaving him in white clouds. The cold no longer hurt. It no longer felt like anything. By morning, the Holloway house stood silent again, empty. When spring came, snow melted to reveal footprints frozen deep into the ground, bare feet that led nowhere. And every winter night after that, the people of Graymore swore they could hear the house breathing again, waiting for someone new to come home. Winter nights came early in the mountain town of Frostvale. By 5 in the evening, the sun vanished behind gray clouds, leaving the world buried in shadow and snow. People locked their doors before dark, not because of crime, but because winter did strange things to the mind here. Lena Whitmore arrived in Frostvale on a night when the cold felt alive. Her car radio crackled as she drove the narrow road leading into town. Snowflakes struck the windshield like ash. The forest on both sides stood frozen, black trees clawing at the sky. She was running from something. Or someone. She wasn't sure anymore. All she knew was that Frostvale was quiet. Quiet enough to think. She rented a small cabin at the edge of town. Cheap, isolated, and surrounded by trees. The owner, a woman with tired eyes, hesitated before handing over the keys. "Winter nights are long here," the woman said. "I like long nights," Lena replied. The woman didn't smile. The cabin was simple. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a fireplace. The air inside smelled faintly of pine and old smoke. Lena dropped her bags and stood still, listening. Nothing. That first night, snow fell heavily. The world outside disappeared, erased by white. Lena sat by the fireplace, sipping tea, trying to ignore the ache in her chest, the familiar weight of memories she had tried to bury. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the clock on the wall stopped ticking. She noticed it immediately. She checked her phone. No signal. No service. The time read 9:17 p.m. Annoyed, she shrugged it off. Power outages happened in winter towns. She went to bed. Sometime later, Lena woke up. The room was exactly the same. Same darkness. Same silence. Her phone screen lit up when she checked it. 9:17 p.m. Her heart skipped. She sat up, suddenly cold. The fire in the fireplace downstairs crackled loudly, too loudly. She went to the window. Snow was frozen in midair. Not falling. Not moving. Just hanging there. Lena stepped back, breath shallow. "I'm dreaming," she whispered. She pinched her arm. Pain bloomed. The cabin creaked. Slow footsteps echoed downstairs. Lena froze. "Hello," she called. No answer. She grabbed a flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The beam cut through darkness, revealing the stairs. Shadows clung unnaturally to the corners. At the bottom of the stairs stood a figure. It was her. Same face. Same clothes. Same terrified expression. The other Lena tilted her head. "You're not supposed to be awake," it said softly. Lena screamed and ran back into her bedroom, slamming the door. Her heart pounded as the silence returned, too quickly. When she checked the phone again, 9:17 p.m. The next day never came. Time refused to move forward. Lena wandered the cabin, marking scratches into the wall each time she felt the loop reset. But the scratches vanished whenever she looked away. The fire never burned out. The snow never fell. And every loop, the knocking began. 3 soft knocks on the door, always at 9:17 p.m. She stopped answering. Eventually, the knocking came from inside the walls. Whispers followed. Not voices, thoughts, regrets, guilt, memories she had tried to forget. Her sister's face appeared in the reflection of the window one loop. Pale, accusing. "You left me," the reflection whispered. Lena collapsed to the floor, covering her ears. That's not true. But it was. Years ago, during another winter night, Lena had driven away after a fight. Her sister had stayed behind. The storm had come suddenly. The road had been found days later. Her sister never was. The cabin darkened. The air grew heavier, pressing down on her chest. "You stopped time," the voice said. Lena looked up. The figure stood in the corner, tall, thin, wrapped in shadows that moved like breathing fabric. Its face was blurred, shifting. "You froze the moment you ran," it continued. Winter listened. The walls closed in slightly. Lena shook her head. "I didn't mean to. Meaning doesn't matter here." The figure stepped closer. Each step echoed like cracking ice. "You can leave," it said, "but only if you stay." Confusion twisted inside her. "What does that mean?" The figure smiled. "You take your place." The door to the cabin creaked open by itself. Outside, Lena saw the road leading out of Frostvale. Clear, free of snow. But in the window's reflection, she saw herself standing still, eyes hollow, unmoving. She understood then. Frostvale didn't trap bodies. It trapped moments. Someone had to remain inside the frozen time, keeping the loop intact, feeding the winter its silence. Her phone vibrated. 9:17 p.m. Tears streamed down Lena's face. She walked toward the door, then stopped. She turned back to the frozen room, the unmoving snow. "I'm sorry," she whispered, to her sister, to herself. She stepped outside. The door slammed shut behind her. Time resumed. Snow fell. The clock in the cabin ticked forward for the first time in years. In Frostvale, people noticed the cabin lights turn on again that winter. They said a woman could be seen through the window at night, standing still, watching the door, always checking the clock, always waiting for 9:17 p.m. And when travelers passed the cabin on winter nights, they swore they heard knocking from the inside. No one remembered when winter first refused to leave Black Hollow. At first, people thought it was just a long season. Snow stayed longer than usual. The lake froze thick enough to walk across. The sun appeared weak, pale, like it was tired of trying. Then spring didn't come. Then summer never followed. Winter simply stayed, and with it, the nights grew longer than they should have. By the third year, people stopped counting days. They counted breaths instead. Caleb Moore arrived in Black Hollow as the last bus of the year groaned to a stop. The driver refused to go farther. No returns after nightfall, the man said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. If the night notices you, it won't let you go. Caleb laughed weakly and stepped off the bus anyway. The cold hit him instantly, sharper than anything he had known. It crawled into his lungs, freezing each breath halfway out. The town looked abandoned. Houses buried up to their windows in snow, streetlights dim and flickering. The sky was already dark. It was only 4:12 p.m. Caleb was a journalist. Or at least, he used to be. Black Hollow was supposed to be his last story. A town trapped in endless winter. People vanishing. Emergency calls that went silent mid-sentence. No bodies were ever found. Just empty houses with the heaters still running. He walked toward the only building with lights on, the inn. Inside, warmth barely existed. A fire burned low. A few people sat scattered around the room, wrapped in coats, faces pale and hollow. No one spoke. The innkeeper slid a key across the counter. Room 3. Don't look outside after midnight. Caleb frowned. Why? The innkeeper hesitated. Because the night looks back. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. The darkness outside the window felt thick, solid, like an ocean pressing against glass. Snow fell upward, drifting toward the sky instead of the ground. At 11:58 p.m., the town siren wailed. Long, low, mournful. Every light in the inn went out. The darkness entered the room. Caleb's breath turned to fog. The walls creaked as if under pressure. Then he heard it. Footsteps in the snow. Slow, heavy, coming closer. Caleb looked through the window. The street was filled with shadows shaped like people, hundreds of them, standing perfectly still. Their eyes glowed faint blue. Their mouths opened in silent screams. At 12 a.m., they all turned toward the inn. The glass cracked. Caleb stumbled back as something knocked. Once, on the window. Not a hand. A face. The next morning, the town pretended nothing had happened. People moved again. Lights flickered on. The siren was silent. Caleb confronted a woman at the inn. What happens at midnight? She stared at him for a long time. That's when winter finishes feeding. He learned the truth slowly. Black Hollow wasn't cursed by weather. It was claimed. Long ago, the town had angered something ancient buried beneath the ice. Something that lived in darkness and measured time not in hours, but in fear. The deal was simple. Winter would stay, and every night, the town would give the darkness those who looked back at it. The disappearances weren't random. They were chosen. That night, Caleb recorded everything. At 11:55 p.m., the siren wailed again. People locked their doors. Caleb didn't. He stood in the street as the night thickened, pressing against him like cold water. Shadows formed around him, whispering his name. You came to see, the night said. The ground split open. Darkness poured out, alive, breathing, endless. Caleb screamed as hands pulled him down, his voice freezing into silence. Morning came. One more house was empty. One more heater hummed in an abandoned room. Winter stayed, and Black Hollow waited for the next night that would never thaw.